If this story interests you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us what city you're watching from. Continuing. The rain fell relentlessly on the colonial roofs of Asheville, that mountain town that always seemed shrouded in a mist of mystery. In the imposing Ashworth Manor, built during the golden age of industry, Roderick watched the drops stream down his study window. His eyes, once so vibrant and joyful, now bore the weight of the absence of Cecilia, his wife, who had passed away suddenly after an aneurysm just over a year ago. The mansion, once the stage for so much laughter and so many parties, now echoed only the muffled sound of the 3-year-old twins, Marianne and Melinda, playing in their upstairs bedroom. Roderick sighed, adjusting his tie. As one of the most successful tech entrepreneurs in the United States, he knew he couldn't afford to collapse, even when everything inside him seemed to be crumbling. "Mr. Roderick, coffee is on the table, and the girls are ready for breakfast," announced Mrs. Zelda, the housekeeper who had served the family for over 20 years. Her keen eyes noted every change in her employer, every deeper sigh. "Thank you, Zelda, I'm coming." In the dining room, decorated with antique furniture and paintings of American landscapes, the twins were already seated in their special high chairs. They were identical, with golden curls and almond-shaped brown eyes, inherited from their New York City mother with Italian ancestry. Beside them, always attentive and smiling, was Deborah Cavendish. Deborah had entered the Ashworths' lives 6 months prior, initially as the girls' private tutor. With her background in pedagogy and specialization in early childhood education, she quickly gained Roderick's trust. It wasn't long before the professional relationship evolved into something more personal. "Good morning, my love," Deborah greeted, standing to lightly kiss Roderick's lips. She was tall, with dark hair perfectly styled in a bun, and always wore discreet yet elegant clothes. "The girls are super excited for their park outing today." "Is Daddy coming with us?" asked Marianne, the more talkative of the two. "Unfortunately, I can't today, Princess," Roderick replied, feeling the familiar pang of guilt. "I have an important meeting with investors from New York City, but I promise we'll do something special this weekend." "You always promise," Melinda murmured. The more observant and sensitive of the twins, Deborah quickly intervened. "Your daddy works very hard to give you the best of everything, dears, and today you'll have me and Mrs. Zelda for a super fun day." Mrs. Zelda, serving coffee, silently observed the interaction. Something in the way Deborah spoke, in the excessively sweet tone she used when Roderick was present, always caused her a slight discomfort. But the housekeeper kept her reservations to herself. After all, her employer seemed more cheerful since Deborah had entered their lives. After breakfast, Roderick said goodbye to his daughters with affectionate kisses and left to face the traffic to Washington, D.C., where his company's headquarters were located. Deborah accompanied him to the door, adjusting his tie with a gesture that seemed rehearsed. "Don't worry about anything here. I'll take care of everything," she assured him, with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. As Roderick's car disappeared through the gate, something subtle shifted in Deborah's posture. Her shoulders relaxed, but her gaze gained a hardness that contrasted with the sweetness of minutes before. "Mrs. Zelda, prepare the girls' bath while I organize the materials for today's lesson," she ordered. With a voice that brooked no questioning, the old housekeeper nodded, but her experienced eyes noticed the change. For weeks she had perceived small alterations in the twins' behavior. They were quieter, less spontaneous, frequently sleepy in the afternoon. Initially, she attributed it to their grief for their mother, but something told her there was more. In the antique copper bathtub, an inheritance from imperial times, Mrs. Zelda carefully prepared the water for the girls, testing the temperature with her elbow, as she had done so many times when Roderick was a child. Deborah entered the bathroom with a mechanical smile. "I can take over from here, Zelda. Go prepare the girls' snack." "But I've always bathed them since they were babies," Zelda argued. Hesitantly. "Things are different now," Deborah cut in, with a look that made the housekeeper recoil. "I am the one who takes care of their education and well-being. Roderick trusts me with this." Annoyed, Mrs. Zelda left the bathroom but remained nearby, organizing towels in the hallway closet. From where she stood, she could hear Deborah's falsely melodious voice and occasionally small groans of discomfort from the children. "The water is cold," Marianne complained. "That's so you can learn to be strong," Deborah replied in a tone that mixed sweetness and firmness. Spoiled children don't get far in life. And you want to make Daddy proud, don't you? Mrs. Zelda frowned. That didn't seem right. Since when was a cold bath a pedagogical method for 3-year-olds? Later, during lunch, Deborah made a point of personally serving the girls food, insisting they eat everything, even when they were clearly already full. But I'm full. Aunt Deborah, Melinda protested, pushing her plate away. No buts. Children who don't eat properly get sick, Deborah insisted with a tense smile. And if you get sick, you'll need shots. Do you want shots? The little ones lowered their heads and continued eating, visibly uncomfortable. Mrs. Zelda, observing from the kitchen, felt her heart ache. That was clear emotional manipulation. But how could she interfere? Roderick seemed blinded by Deborah's charms, and she, Zelda, was just an elderly employee who could be easily replaced. In the afternoon, after the supposed lesson, which seemed more like military training for toddlers, in Zelda's opinion, the girls were unusually sleepy. Deborah put them down for a nap, insisting that no one enter the room to not disturb their pedagogical rest, as she called it. Taking advantage of Deborah being on the phone in the garden, Mrs. Zelda silently entered the twins' room. They were sleeping deeply, almost motionless, which was unusual for such small and active children. She touched Marianne's forehead. There was no fever, but the girl barely reacted to the touch, which was strange. On the bedside table, she noticed a small cup with remnants of a liquid that didn't seem to be water or common juice. She sniffed discreetly. It had a slightly bitter, almost imperceptible odor. "What are you doing here?" Deborah's sharp voice startled the housekeeper. Standing in the doorway, the younger woman had narrowed eyes and lips pressed into a thin line. "I just came to check if they were well covered." "The afternoon got chilly," Zelda justified, trying to remain calm. "I already told you I don't want anyone coming in when they're resting," Deborah scolded, approaching menacingly. "Rest is fundamental for cognitive development. You are undermining the method I developed especially for them." "Forgive me, Miss Deborah, but these girls are not sleeping normally. They seem drugged." Deborah's face paled for an instant, before being taken over by an offended expression. "How dare you? Are you implying that I would harm the daughters of the man I love? That's absurd. Roderick will hear about this unfounded accusation." Mrs. Zelda felt a chill. She knew she was treading on dangerous ground, but something told her the girls were at risk. "I'm not accusing anyone. I just find this deep sleep strange, and this little cup here with a strange-smelling liquid." Deborah snatched the cup from Zelda's hand. "This is a natural vitamin supplement that I developed during my master's in child nutrition. Completely safe and approved. Roderick is aware and agrees with its use." Before the housekeeper could respond, the phone rang. It was Roderick, saying he would be late due to complications in his meeting. Deborah answered with her sweetest voice, assuring him that everything was perfectly fine. Upon hanging up, she faced Zelda with an icy gaze. "I think it's time we had a serious talk about your role in this house. Mrs. Zelda, things have changed and you need to accept that." The housekeeper met her gaze, a growing concern taking over her heart. Something was very wrong in that mansion, and the little twins were completely vulnerable. She needed to find a way to protect them, even if it meant facing Deborah's wrath, and possibly losing the job she had held for 2 decades. Outside, the rain continued to fall on Asheville, and the dark clouds seemed to foreshadow the storm that was to come. The days in Asheville continued with a seemingly harmonious routine at Ashworth Manor. For Roderick, immersed in his work and still battling grief, everything seemed to be settling, thanks to Deborah's efficient presence. The girls were always clean, fed, and most importantly, calm when he returned from work. A tranquility the businessman attributed to the special pedagogical method his girlfriend was so proud to apply. "It's impressive how you managed to keep them both so well behaved," he commented one evening, as they dined after the twins had gone to sleep. "Cecilia always said it was impossible to get them both to stay quiet at the same time." Deborah smiled, refilling his wine glass. "It's all a matter of method, my love. Children need routine, boundaries, and appropriate stimulation. In fact, I'm thinking of publishing a book about my method. It would be great for my academic career." "You really should," Roderick agreed without noticing the ambition that shone in her eyes. "I'm sure it would be a success." What Roderick didn't know was that, behind the facade of a dedicated pedagogue, Deborah hid increasingly disturbing behaviors when she was alone with the children. That very morning, while he was participating in a video conference locked in his study, a particularly unsettling episode had occurred. Deborah had filled the antique copper bathtub with icy water, despite Asheville's already naturally cold climate, and forced the twins to remain seated there for almost 20 minutes, claiming it strengthened their immune system. "It's too cold, Aunt Deborah," Melinda whimpered, her lips already purplish and her body trembling. "I don't want to stay here." Marianne tried to get up, only to be pushed back firmly. "You are very spoiled," Deborah smiled, but her eyes remained cold. "This is for your own good. Strong children don't complain. Besides, if you tell Daddy, he'll be very sad with you." "Do you want to make Daddy sad again? He was already sad enough when your mommy left." The little ones, confused and frightened, merely shook their heads negatively, stifling their cries. Mrs. Zelda, who was passing through the hallway carrying clean clothes, heard the muffled sobs. She stopped discreetly near the half-open bathroom door and observed the scene, feeling her stomach churn with indignation. That was not a pedagogical method. It was pure and simple cruelty. "Miss Deborah, I think that's enough," the housekeeper said, entering the bathroom with towels in her hands. "The girls are trembling with cold." Deborah turned sharply but quickly composed a serene expression. "Mrs. Zelda, please do not interfere with the educational process. This therapeutic bath is part of the adapted Montessori-Waldorf methodology I am applying. With all due respect, miss, I worked in schools before coming to this house. I know these methodologies, and none of them include torturing children with icy water," Zelda responded firmly, as she took the girls out of the water and wrapped them in plush towels. For an instant, a flash of fury crossed Deborah's face, but she quickly masked it with a condescending smile. "I see your methods are outdated, Mrs. Zelda. Perhaps it's time for a professional update. Or retirement." The veiled threat hung in the air. Zelda hugged the girls to her, feeling their small bodies tremble. "I'll prepare some hot tea for them." "That won't be necessary," Deborah cut in. "I myself will give them their special supplement, which is much more effective for circulation." When Zelda left the bathroom with the twins, she found Roderick in the hallway, apparently having finished his conference early. "What happened? Why are they trembling?" he asked, concerned. Before the housekeeper could answer, Deborah appeared at the door, composed and smiling. "Oh, my love, you're already done. The girls were just doing a hydrotherapy exercise. It's excellent for neuromotor development." "But they seem cold," Roderick insisted, touching Melinda's icy face. "It's part of the process," Deborah explained softly. "The change in temperature stimulates the immune system. It's scientifically proven. I can show you the studies later." Zelda watched, powerless, as Roderick accepted the explanation, seemingly convinced by the technical terminology and the confidence with which Deborah spoke. How could he, an intelligent and loving man, be so blind? "Mrs. Zelda doesn't seem to approve of your methods," Roderick commented, noticing the tension between the two women. "It's understandable," Deborah replied, with a theatrical sigh. "She's been doing things her way for so long. Changes are difficult, especially when we reach a certain age. But I'm sure she only wants the best for the girls, even if her methods are a bit outdated." That night, after putting the twins to sleep, not without first giving them the said supplement that made them fall into an abnormally deep sleep, Deborah sought Roderick in his study. She found him working on some documents, his brow furrowed in concentration. "We need to talk about Mrs. Zelda," she said, sitting opposite him. Roderick looked up, surprised. "What's wrong?" "I'm worried, dear. She has been constantly interfering with the girls' education, contradicting my instructions in front of them. This confuses the children and compromises all the pedagogical work." Deborah paused dramatically. "Furthermore, I've noticed she's been very forgetful lately. Just today she couldn't remember where she put Marianne's allergy medication." "She's been with us for so long," Roderick pondered, uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation. "And she did wonderful work," Deborah agreed skillfully. "But perhaps it's time for her to rest, to enjoy retirement? It must be tiring for someone her age to care for two such active children." "Are you suggesting I fire her?" Roderick asked, surprised. Deborah gently took his hands in hers. "I'm suggesting we think about her well-being and the girls. We could hire someone younger, with updated training in early childhood education to assist with their care. Someone who will work in harmony with my methodology. Roderick seemed hesitant, but Deborah knew exactly how to persuade him. Besides, I'm sure you could offer her a very good retirement. After all, she's practically family, isn't she? She deserves a good rest after so many years of dedication. A few days later, Mrs. Zelda was called to Roderick's study. When she emerged, her eyes were teary, but she maintained her dignity. In a week, she would leave the house where she had served for over 20 years. However, Zelda was not a woman to give up easily, especially when it came to the safety of children she had practically helped raise. In the days that followed, she carefully observed Deborah's every move, noting Time's behaviors and especially the twins' state after taking the said supplement. One afternoon, she found an opportunity when Deborah left for a university meeting. Taking advantage of her absence, Zelda managed to examine the supplement bottle that was kept in a locked drawer in Deborah's room. Locks had never been a problem for someone who knew every corner of that house. The liquid had a slightly bitter odor and no label or identification. Acting quickly, Zelda transferred a small amount into a small vial she carried in her purse. When Deborah returned, nothing seemed out of place, but the housekeeper noticed how obsessively she checked the drawer where she kept the bottle, even without apparent reason to suspect anything. The next morning, taking advantage of her weekly day off, Zelda visited an old pharmacist friend in Asheville. Julian was known for his discretion and competence, having served the local community for decades. "I need you to analyze this, Julian. It's urgent and confidential," she explained, handing him the vial. The pharmacist raised his gray eyebrows. "Look serious, Zelda. Is it about those girls you always talk about?" "Yes, and I'm afraid for them. The woman who is caring for them. Something is wrong." Julian nodded gravely. "I'll analyze this right away. Come back in 2 hours." When Zelda returned, she found Julian with a grave expression. "This is diazepam, Zelda. A potent tranquilizer, a benzodiazepine. In appropriate doses, it's used to treat anxiety, insomnia, seizures. But in small children, and without a medical prescription, this is extremely dangerous." Zelda felt her blood run cold. What could be the effects on 3-year-old children? Excessive sleepiness, lethargy, respiratory problems, dependence. Not to mention it can affect brain development. Who is giving this to the girls? Their father's girlfriend. She says it's a vitamin supplement. This is not a vitamin, Zelda. This is a controlled medication that can only be sold with a medical prescription. If someone is giving this to children without medical supervision, they need to be stopped immediately. Armed with this information, Zelda returned to the mansion, determined to confront Roderick. However, when she arrived, she discovered that her suitcases were already in the entrance hall. "What does this mean?" she asked the new employee, a young woman who had been hired the day before to assist with the transition. "Miss Deborah said Mr. Roderick decided to anticipate your retirement. She had your things prepared today." Zelda felt despair grow. Deborah had acted faster than she expected, clearly suspecting that the housekeeper had discovered her secret. How could she now protect the twins? As she collected her belongings, she saw the girls playing in the garden under Deborah's distant supervision. They were paler than usual, their movements slower, their eyes lacking the characteristic sparkle of childhood. It was then that she noticed the new employee observing her with curiosity. Louisa was her name, young, but with intelligent eyes and a gentle expression. "Perhaps... Louisa, could you come here for a moment?" Zelda called. The young woman approached hesitantly. "I need you to pay close attention to what I'm about to say. The lives of those girls may depend on it." As the sun began to set over Asheville, Zelda transferred the torch of her concern to younger hands, hoping there was still time to save the twins from the danger that lived under the same roof as them, disguised as love and care. Louisa Sterling was only 23, a newly qualified nurse, when she accepted the job at Ashworth Manor. Born and raised in a simple family in Asheville, she saw in that opportunity not only a good salary, but also the chance to help 2 children who, according to the advertisement, needed special care after the loss of their mother. What she didn't expect was the weight of responsibility that Mrs. Zelda had placed on her shoulders that evening, moments before the elderly woman definitively left the mansion. Observe their behavior after taking anything given by Deborah, the housekeeper had instructed in an urgent, low voice. Pay attention to their eyes, their motor coordination. And especially, keep an eye on that unlabeled bottle she keeps in the second drawer of the dresser. That's not a vitamin, girl. It's a potent sedative. Now, 3 days after Zelda's departure, Louisa began to understand the gravity of the situation. The twins alternated periods of normal age-appropriate excitement with hours of inexplicable lethargy. Their small bodies seemed out of sync, as if disconnected from their minds at certain times of the day, always after the special vitamins that Deborah insisted on administering personally. "Louisa, can you get the clean towels from the hallway closet?" Deborah asked with her artificial smile, as she prepared the girls' bath. "Of course. Miss Deborah," the young woman replied, obediently. But instead of going directly to the closet, Louisa made a silent detour to the master bedroom, where she knew Deborah kept the mysterious bottle. Taking advantage of the fact that the woman was busy in the bathroom, she slipped to the dresser and, with trembling fingers, opened the second drawer. There it was, a small, amber glass bottle without any identification. Beside it, a needleless syringe, the kind used to administer liquid medication to children. Louisa felt a chill run down her spine. She quickly took her cell phone from her pocket and photographed the bottle next to the syringe, before closing the drawer and rushing to get the towels. When she returned to the bathroom, Deborah already had the girls in the bathtub. The water, Louisa noted with relief, was at an appropriate temperature this time. "You took your time, girl," Deborah commented with a slight tone of irritation. "Sorry, I couldn't find the softest towels," Louisa justified, placing them on the nearby cabinet. During the bath, Louisa observed how Deborah spoke to the twins. There was an artificial sweetness in her voice, but her eyes remained cold, calculating, as if the children were mere objects in an experiment. "You love your bath with Aunt Deborah, don't you?" she would ask in an almost threatening tone. The little ones merely nodded silently, their eyes downcast, a submissive behavior that was alarming in children normally so spontaneous, according to Mrs. Zelda's accounts. After the bath came dinner. Louisa noticed how obsessive Deborah was about the girls' food. "No one but me prepares or touches their food, understood?" Deborah instructed, as she prepared the purees in the kitchen. "They have a sensitive digestive system. Any contamination can be dangerous." "Yes, miss. May I ask what kind of sensitivity they have?" "I have a nursing background. Perhaps I can help." Deborah's gaze hardened. "We don't need your basic nursing background. I have a master's degree in pedagogy with a specialization in special needs. I know exactly what I'm doing." Louisa nodded submissively, but her brain registered every strange detail. Why so much secrecy surrounding the children's food? Why did Deborah never allow anyone else to prepare or even touch their plates or bottles? That night, after the twins were put to sleep, not without first receiving their special vitamins, Louisa took advantage of Deborah being busy with Roderick in the study to observe the girls. They slept abnormally deeply, almost without moving, their breathing sometimes irregular, classic signs of drug sedation, as she had learned in her nursing studies. The next morning, during her day off, Louisa went to the central pharmacy in Asheville, the same one Mrs. Zelda had visited days before. Old Julian looked up when she entered, adjusting his reading glasses. "How can I help you, my dear?" he asked with his grave and kind voice. "Mr. Julian, my name is Louisa Sterling. I'm working at Ashworth Manor, taking care of the twins. Mrs. Zelda told me about you." The pharmacist's face instantly turned serious. "Zelda was here a few days ago. I'm worried about what she showed me." "That's exactly what I came to talk about," Louisa said, showing him the photo she had taken in Deborah's drawer. "Can you tell me what this might be?" "It's what she gives the girls every day, claiming it's a vitamin supplement." Julian examined the photo carefully, his brow increasingly furrowed. "It's the same bottle Zelda brought me a sample of. Diazepam, no doubt. And that syringe. My God, she's dosing this for the children as if it were cough syrup. What exactly is the danger?" Louisa asked, though she already suspected the answer. "Diazepam is a potent sedative from the benzodiazepine group. In adults with a medical prescription, it's used for anxiety, insomnia, muscle spasms. But in 3-year-old children, without medical supervision? The risks are enormous. Respiratory depression, chronic lethargy, impaired neurological development, chemical dependence. The pharmacist paused, visibly disturbed. This is extremely dangerous. This woman is essentially drugging these children. How can I prove this? I need concrete evidence to convince their father. Julian thought for a moment. We would need a larger sample for a complete laboratory test, and it would be important to document the children's behavior before and after the administration of the substance. But be careful, my dear. If this woman is capable of doing this to children, she wouldn't hesitate to do something worse to someone who threatens to expose her. Louisa nodded, determined. I'll do whatever it takes to protect those girls. In the days that followed, Louisa became a meticulous observer. Discreetly, she began to record the twins' behavior on her cell phone, taking small videos when Deborah was not around. She documented the stark difference between the children in the mornings, still sleepy, but more natural, and after the vitamins, when they became almost like lifeless little dolls. She also noticed that Deborah was increasingly territorial regarding the children. She didn't allow Louisa to be alone with them for more than a few minutes, always inventing a task to keep her busy in another room. One night, when Roderick left for a business dinner in Charlottesville and wouldn't return until the next day, Louisa saw her opportunity. She waited for Deborah to put the girls to sleep and go downstairs for her usual glass of wine on the veranda. Then, silently, she entered the master bedroom. With her heart pounding, she went to the drawer where the bottle was kept. She needed a larger sample for the complete analysis Julian had mentioned. But when she opened the drawer, she was startled. The bottle wasn't there. Looking for something? Deborah's icy voice made Louisa freeze. Standing at the bedroom door, the woman held the bottle in one hand and a glass of wine in the other, a cruel smile playing on her lips. I was just putting away some clothes I washed, Louisa improvised, trying to remain calm. Clothes? In my personal drawer? Deborah laughed, a joyless sound. Do you think I'm an idiot, girl? I've noticed your peculiar interest in my vitamins. I've seen how you watch the girls, how you take little hidden photos with your cell phone. Deborah slowly advanced into the room, closing the door behind her. Louisa took a step back, feeling the edge of the dresser against her back. I don't know what you're talking about, Louisa tried, her voice betraying her nervousness. Of course you do, Deborah retorted, placing the bottle on the vanity. That old busybody Zelda filled your head with absurd ideas, didn't she? About me supposedly drugging the girls. She laughed again, a sound that sent shivers down Louisa's spine. This is just a special supplement developed by myself. It calms the children, aids in development. Roderick trusts me and my methods. If it's just a supplement, why doesn't it have a label? Why don't you let anyone else administer it? Why do you hide it in a locked drawer? Deborah's face hardened. You're asking too many questions for a simple employee. I'm a nurse, and I can recognize signs of drug sedation. What you're doing is dangerous and illegal. In a swift move, Deborah grabbed the cell phone Louisa had left on the dresser. Let's see what you've been recording, you busybody. Before Louisa could react, Deborah unlocked the phone. Apparently, she had observed the password at some point and began to scroll through the files. Interesting collection of evidence you have here, she commented with false admiration. Too bad it's going to disappear. With a sudden movement, Deborah threw the cell phone on the floor and stomped on it with her shoe heel, destroying the screen and part of the device. Louisa watched, horrified. Has Deborah destroyed not only her cell phone, but all the evidence she had so carefully collected? Listen closely. Young lady, Deborah hissed, coming so close that Louisa could smell her wine breath. Those girls are my gateway to a life I deserve. Roderick is rich, influential, and completely manipulable in his state of grief. Soon I'll be the new Mrs. Ashworth, and nothing and no one will stand in my way. What do you gain by drugging the girls? Louisa asked, gathering courage. Control, Deborah replied with terrifying simplicity. Children are noisy, unpredictable, annoying. Roderick adores them, but he doesn't have the time or emotional disposition to deal with tantrums and crying. I provide him with perfectly well-behaved daughters, and in return I get the life I've always wanted. Louisa felt a wave of nausea. That's sick. You're putting their health at risk. They're fine, just calm, and as for you, Deborah grabbed Louisa's arm with surprising force, her nails digging into the young woman's skin. "If you say one word about this to Roderick or anyone else, you will bitterly regret it. Understood?" Louisa met her gaze, fear gradually replaced by determination. "Perfectly, Miss Deborah. Good, now clean up this mess and get out of my sight. Tomorrow we'll discuss your departure, or rather your dismissal for incompetence." When Deborah finally left the room, Louisa took a deep breath, trying to calm her racing heart. Her cell phone was destroyed, but a fragment of hope remained before coming upstairs. She had sent some of the photos and videos to Julian, the pharmacist's email. As a precaution, as she collected the broken pieces of her cell phone, Louisa knew she had lost a battle, but she was far from giving up the war. Those girls needed her now more than ever. And somehow, she needed to make Roderick see the true face of the woman he trusted. In the next room, the twins slept their induced sleep, oblivious to the drama unfolding because of them. The cold mountain wind blew against the mansion windows, like a premonition of the storm to come. The next morning dawned grey in Asheville, with heavy clouds promising another typical Blue Ridge Mountain storm. Louisa had barely slept, her mind frantically searching for a solution. Without her cell phone, with the evidence destroyed by Deborah, and probably facing imminent dismissal, her options were limited. Roderick would only return late that afternoon from his business dinner in Charlottesville. This gave her a few precious hours to act before Deborah could convince him to send her away. "Good morning." "Louisa." Deborah's falsely sweet voice surprised her in the kitchen, where she was preparing breakfast. "Did you sleep well?" "Yes, miss," Louisa replied, keeping her gaze down, feigning submission. "Good. Enjoy your last day here." Deborah adjusted her impeccably ironed silk blouse. "I've already informed Roderick by phone that you haven't been performing well in your duties. He left the decision about your stay in my hands." Louisa nodded silently as she placed the toast on the table. "Oh. And don't worry about preparing the girls' breakfast," Deborah continued with a venomous smile. "I'll take care of it myself. In fact, from now on I want you to stay away from them. Completely understood?" "Yes, miss." As Deborah went upstairs to wake the twins, Louisa seized the moment of solitude in the kitchen. Quickly she grabbed a small empty vial she had hidden in her pocket, brought from Julian's pharmacy the day before, in anticipation that she would need concrete proof. The plan was risky. She would need to get a sample of the liquid Deborah gave the children and somehow preserve it until Roderick returned. But how to do that without raising suspicion? And more importantly, how to ensure he would believe her, a newly arrived employee, against the woman he blindly trusted? The opportunity arose during breakfast. Deborah had prepared the girls' traditional vitamin in small colored cups. "Drink all your supplement." "Dear," she instructed Melinda, with that tone that brooked no disobedience. The little one, still sleepy, made a face as she tasted the bitter liquid, but continued drinking under Deborah's watchful eye. "Good girl. This will make you strong and smart." Marianne, always more resistant, tried to push her cup away. "I don't want it, Aunt Deborah. It's yucky." "Don't be stubborn," Deborah scolded, lightly squeezing the child's arm. "Do you want Daddy to know you're being naughty?" Reluctantly, the girl also took the vitamin, while Louisa watched, feeling her heart clench. Deborah's behavior was clearly abusive, using the father's love and fear as a tool for manipulation. After breakfast, Deborah asked Louisa to wash the dishes while she took the girls to the playroom. It was then that the young nurse saw her chance. The cups with liquid residues were still there. Quickly, using a napkin, she collected a few drops from one of the cups into the small vial, which she hid again in her pocket. Shortly after, the twins already showed signs of the sedative's effect: slower movements, half-closed eyes, slurred speech. It was devastating to see such small children being systematically drugged. "I'm going to take the girls to rest for a bit," Deborah announced, leading the little ones who could barely stand. "Take the opportunity to clean the upstairs bathrooms." Louisa obeyed, planning her next action. The vial with the sample was safe in her pocket, but she needed more. As she cleaned the master suite bathroom, an idea began to form in her mind. Mrs. Zelda had mentioned she had left something hidden before leaving. A little safeguard, as she called it. She said it would be in the false ceiling of the pantry, where she used to keep important documents. Taking advantage of Deborah being busy with the children, Louisa went to the pantry, moved some cans and pushed the small false ceiling panel in the upper corner. There, in a sealed envelope, she found what appeared to be a small wireless security camera, the kind that runs on battery and can be accessed by cell phone. Next to the device, a note in Mrs. Zelda's shaky handwriting. I installed one of these in the girls' room before I left. Access code Zelda Protector 123, it's already recording. Louisa felt a glimmer of hope. Evidence, real evidence of what Deborah had been doing to the children. But without her cell phone, how would she access the recordings? At that moment, the house phone rang. It was Roderick saying he would arrive earlier than expected, due to approaching bad weather, probably in 2 hours. "We'll be waiting, my love," Deborah answered sweetly. "I'm preparing that risotto you love, and the girls are eager to see you." As soon as she hung up, her demeanor changed completely. "Louisa!" she shouted imperiously. The young woman appeared at the kitchen door. "Yes, miss? Roderick will be here earlier. I want this house impeccable, understood? And when he arrives, keep yourself busy and away from us. I don't want you trying to talk to him before I communicate your dismissal." "Yes, miss." As Deborah turned her attention back to preparing the meal, Louisa thought frantically. Time was running out. She needed a plan. It was then that the phone rang again. Deborah, busy with the stove, told Louisa to answer. "Ashworth residence, Louisa." "It's Julian from the pharmacy." The old pharmacist's voice sounded worried. "I managed to analyze the images you sent me. It's definitely diazepam, and in a dangerously high concentration for children." Louisa nervously glanced at Deborah, who was stirring the risotto with her back to her. "Yes, I understand," she replied vaguely, so as not to raise suspicion. "Listen, girl, this is serious. Those children need to be examined by a doctor immediately. The long-term effects can be devastating. Bring them here, or better yet, I'll send my nephew Paul to pick you up. He's a pediatric doctor at the municipal hospital." "That won't be necessary," Louisa interrupted, seeing that Deborah was starting to pay attention to the conversation. "The usual deliveries are great, thank you." There was a brief silence on the other end of the line. Then Julian understood. "She's nearby, isn't she? You can't speak freely." "Exactly. I understand. Well, either way, I'm coming over. Paul will drop me off at the mansion in 20 minutes. I have the printed evidence of what that woman is doing. There's time to put an end to this. But the weather is closing in. Isn't it better?" Louisa tried to argue, genuinely concerned for the elderly man's safety in the approaching storm. "Don't worry about me. Those girls can't spend another day under the influence of that poison." 20 minutes. When Louisa hung up, she found Deborah looking at her suspiciously. "Who was that?" "The Central Pharmacy," Louisa replied, maintaining her composure. "About a vitamin delivery that Mr. Roderick ordered." "What vitamins?" "Roderick doesn't take vitamins." "I don't know, miss. I just passed on the message." Deborah narrowed her eyes, clearly suspicious, but the oven timer beeped, diverting her attention. "Finish setting the table. And don't forget, when Roderick arrives, stay away." The next 20 minutes passed with palpable tension in the mansion. Outside, the sky grew even darker, and the first thunder began to rumble in the distance. The storm was coming, both literally and figuratively. Punctually, the doorbell rang. Before Deborah could stop her, Louisa ran to answer. At the door, drenched by the rain that had begun to fall, stood Julian, holding a plastic folder protected from the moisture. "Good afternoon, I've come to speak with Mr. Ashworth," he announced formally. "He hasn't arrived yet," Louisa replied softly. "And she's in the kitchen." Julian nodded discreetly, entering the hall. "I'll wait then." Deborah appeared in the hallway, her face a mask of false cordiality. "Can I help you?" "I'm Julian Peixoto from the Central Pharmacy," the elderly man introduced himself with dignity. "I've come to discuss an urgent matter with Mr. Ashworth." "He's traveling," Deborah lied softly. "But he should return tomorrow. Can I take a message?" "I prefer to wait," Julian replied firmly, sitting on the hall sofa uninvited. "It's a matter that cannot wait." The standoff was interrupted by the sound of a car approaching. Through the windows they saw the headlights of Roderick's SUV illuminating the path in the growing darkness of the storm. Deborah paled slightly, but maintained her composure. "It seems he's back early." "What?" A surprise. Seconds later, Roderick entered, shaking water from his coat. His face showed surprise at seeing the group gathered in the hall. "What's going on here?" he asked, confused. "Roderick, dear, this gentleman insisted on speaking with you," Deborah explained, quickly positioning herself beside him, as if to mark her territory. "I told him you'd be tired from your trip." "Mr. Ashworth," Julian interrupted, stepping forward. "My name is Julian Peixoto. I've been a pharmacist in Asheville for 40 years. I need to speak with you about your daughters." "It's a matter of the utmost gravity." Roderick looked at Deborah, confused, then back at Julian. "My daughters? What is this about?" "Perhaps it would be better if we spoke in private," the pharmacist suggested, looking meaningfully at Deborah. "Nonsense," she cut in. "I am practically the mother of those girls. Any matter concerning them concerns me." Roderick placed a hand on Deborah's shoulder, reassuring her. "It's all right, my love. We'll all go to the study and clear this up." It was at this critical moment that a faint cry came from upstairs. One of the twins had woken up. "I'll go," Louisa quickly offered, running upstairs before Deborah could stop her. In the girls' room, she found Marianne sitting on the bed, eyes half closed, mumbling something incomprehensible. "What's wrong, dear?" Louisa asked gently. "Water, thirsty," the little one murmured, her voice slurred as if she were drunk. Louisa helped her drink some water from the cup on the bedside table. Melinda still slept, as motionless as a doll, her breathing so shallow it was almost imperceptible. "What did Aunt Deborah give you to drink today, Marianne?" Louisa asked softly. "Special vitamin," the girl replied, sleepy. "Makes me sleep. I don't like it." "But Aunt Deborah says Daddy gets sad if I don't take it." Louisa's heart clenched. So small and already being manipulated in such a cruel way. "Come, dear, let's go see Daddy." Carrying Marianne in her arms, Louisa descended the stairs. Upon reaching the hall, she found a tense scene. Julian had opened his folder and was showing something to Roderick, whose face shifted from confusion to disbelief. "This is absurd," Deborah exclaimed, her face red with fury. "This old man is making up stories." "These are not inventions, Mr. Ashworth," Julian insisted, maintaining his calm. "I analyzed the contents of the bottle that Mrs. Zelda and then Louisa brought me. It is diazepam, a potent sedative in a dose sufficient to knock out an adult. And your companion has been administering this regularly to your daughters." Roderick looked at Deborah, then at Julian, clearly torn between his trust in the woman he loved and the serious accusations he was hearing. It was at this moment that Louisa appeared with Marianne in her arms, the girl barely able to keep her head up. "Daddy," the little one murmured. Reaching out her arms, Roderick rushed to her, taking her from Louisa's arms. "What happened to her? Is she sick?" "She's not sick, sir," Louisa replied, gathering courage. "She's sedated, just like Melinda. Like they are every day after the special vitamins that Miss Deborah insists on giving them." Deborah advanced, furious. "You lying little maid! Roderick, don't believe her! She's making all this up because she knows she's going to be fired for incompetence." "I'm not making anything up," Louisa retorted, maintaining her firmness. "I have proof. The sample Mr. Julian analyzed, the videos Mrs. Zelda installed in the girls' room, and this—" She took the small vial with the liquid collected earlier from her pocket. "This is what was left in Marianne's cup this morning. We can do a toxicological test right now." Roderick looked at his semi-asleep daughter in his arms, then at Melinda, whom Louisa had also brought in the same lethargic state. Then his gaze fell on Deborah, who now alternated between fury and growing panic. "Deborah, what have you done to my daughters?" he asked, his voice trembling. "Nothing, I swear. It's just a natural supplement to calm them down. You yourself saw how agitated they are, how they haven't slept properly since Cecilia left." She tried to approach, but Roderick recoiled, protecting his daughter in his arms. Outside, a lightning bolt cut across the sky, followed by the deafening roar of thunder. The storm had arrived in Asheville with all its fury. And inside Ashworth Manor, an even greater storm was just beginning. The study at Ashworth Manor, with its hardwood bookshelves and antique furniture, had become the stage for a drama none of those present had ever imagined living. Outside, the storm lashed Asheville with its relentless fury. Lightning tore across the sky and rain fell in thick curtains, as if the sky itself wept for what was happening within those centuries-old walls. Roderick had placed the twins on a sofa, where they remained in a semi-asleep state, oblivious to the chaos around them. His face alternated between concern for his daughters and disbelief at the accusations against Deborah. "This can't be true," he murmured, more to himself than to the others. "Deborah loves the girls. She takes care of them as if they were her own." "Mr. Ashworth," Julian interjected with the authority of his many years of experience, "I understand your reluctance to believe, but the facts are irrefutable. What your companion has been giving your daughters is diazepam, a potent sedative from the benzodiazepine class. In adults under medical prescription, it's used to treat anxiety and insomnia. In 3-year-old children, without medical supervision and in inadequate doses, it can cause irreversible neurological damage." Deborah, who until then had maintained a defensive posture, suddenly changed tactics. Tears began to stream down her face as she approached Roderick with outstretched hands. "Roderick, my love, it's not what it seems. Yes, I gave them a mild sedative, but it was out of love. You saw how they were after Cecilia left. Sleepless nights, constant crying, nightmares. I just wanted to help. I wanted our family to have peace so you could work without worrying." Roderick recoiled, his face hardening. "You drugged my daughters." "No, it was just a supplement to calm them down." "An unlabeled supplement?" "Kept in a locked drawer?" Roderick pointed to the vial Julian held. "That's not a multivitamin, Deborah. It's a controlled substance that requires a prescription. And you've been giving it to 3-year-old children." "My daughters." Louisa, who had remained silent observing the scene, decided to intervene. "Mr. Roderick, the girls need immediate medical attention. The effects of diazepam in small children can include respiratory depression. I see that Melinda, especially, has slower breathing than normal." As if to confirm the urgency of the situation, Melinda let out a small whimper, her little body contracting in a slight spasm. Roderick immediately picked up the phone. "I'm calling an ambulance." "No!" Deborah cried, trying to stop him. "You're overreacting. They're just tired from their day's routine." Ignoring her, Roderick made the call, requesting an ambulance urgently. As he spoke, Deborah seemed to wilt, her face alternating between despair and calculation, as if evaluating her increasingly limited options. "They're on their way," Roderick informed, hanging up. Then he turned to Deborah with an expression that mixed pain and anger. How long have you been drugging my daughters?" Deborah hesitated, then, seeing that the situation was irreversibly lost, dropped her mask of concern. Her face hardened, and a bitter smile appeared on her lips. "Since the beginning," she admitted with a coldness that shocked everyone. "Since the first week I entered this house. Do you think it was a coincidence that the girls became so well-behaved right after my arrival? Those little pests wouldn't sit still for a minute." Roderick paled as if he had been punched. "My God, I trusted you. I let you take care of my daughters." "And I did," Deborah retorted with a dry laugh. "They were clean, fed, and most importantly silent. That's what you wanted, wasn't it? A tidy house to come back to after work. No crying, no mess, no problems. I wanted my daughters healthy and happy." Roderick exploded. "Not drugged to be convenient. Happy?" Deborah laughed bitterly. "You didn't even notice when they were sad or happy. You were too busy with your company, with your endless grief for Cecilia, the perfect, irreplaceable Cecilia. I did what needed to be done to create a controlled environment, so you could move on with your life without worries." "Controlled?" Louisa interrupted, indignant. "You were controlling those girls as if they were puppets. Do you see how they are now? They can barely keep their eyes open. And the cold bath, the punishments, the psychological terror?" Roderick turned to Louisa, shocked. "What cold bath? What punishments?" "Ask your beloved Deborah," Louisa replied without looking away from the woman. "Ask her about the cold water baths to strengthen the immune system, about how she threatened the girls by saying you would be sad with them if they didn't obey, how she forced them to eat until they were sick." Something seemed to break inside Roderick. He looked at his daughters, so small and vulnerable, on the sofa, then at Deborah, the woman he had blindly trusted. Why do this to 2 innocent children? Deborah's face contorted into an expression of contempt. "Innocent? They are your anchors, Roderick. Without them, you would have already overcome your precious wife's death and moved on, with me building a new life. But no, you cling to them because they are Cecilia's image. I had to do something to have some control in this house, to have you for myself." The revelation of the extent of Deborah's manipulation and sick jealousy fell like a bomb in the room. For a moment everyone was silent, only the sound of the storm outside filling the void. "You are sick," Roderick finally said, with a calmness that contrasted with the storm of emotions within him. "And I was blind, stupidly blind." At that moment, the sound of the ambulance siren arriving cut through the air. Louisa ran to the door to receive the paramedics, while Julian approached the girls to check their vital signs. "You can't do this to me," Deborah cried, changing tactics again, grabbing Roderick's arm. "I love you. I did all this for us, to have a perfect family." Roderick pulled away sharply. "It's over, Deborah. There is no us. There never was." The paramedics quickly entered, guided by Louisa. After a brief assessment of the girls, they confirmed the need to take them immediately to the hospital for detoxification and observation. "We'll take them to St. Vincent's Hospital," the older paramedic informed. "You can accompany them in the ambulance." Roderick nodded, grabbing a coat to protect himself from the rain. Before leaving, he turned to Deborah, who now seemed strangely calm. "I want you and your things out of this house when we return," he said coldly. "And be grateful I'm not calling the police right now." "You'll still regret this, Roderick," she replied with a sinister smile. "No one takes care of them like I do." "No one. I will take care of them," Louisa interjected with determination. "I'll go with you to the hospital, Mr. Roderick. I'm a nurse. I can help." Roderick seemed relieved by the offer. "Thank you, Louisa. And thank you for not giving up on my daughters, even when I was unable to protect them." As they left for the ambulance, Julian held Roderick's arm. "I'll drive you in my car, and I brought all the documentation about what we found in the vial. The doctor will need it for the proper treatment." "And me?" Deborah asked, suddenly appearing smaller and less threatening. "Are you going to leave me here alone in this storm?" "You created your own storm, Deborah," Roderick replied without looking back. "Now live with it." The group left into the stormy night. Leaving Deborah alone in the mansion, she had almost transformed into her private kingdom. The journey to the hospital was tense, with paramedics constantly monitoring the twins' vital signs. Louisa held Marianne's hand, who occasionally opened her eyes, confused and scared. "It's going to be all right, sweetie," she whispered, stroking the little girl's hair. "Daddy's here, and Aunt Louisa, too." Roderick watched the scene, a lump in his throat. How could he have been so blind? How could he not have noticed what was happening right under his nose? Guilt consumed him, mixed with a growing anger at himself and at Deborah. At the hospital, the girls were immediately taken to the pediatric emergency room. As the doctors examined them, Roderick, Louisa, and Julian waited anxiously in the waiting room. "I should have noticed," Roderick lamented, breaking the silence. "The changes in their behavior, the sleepiness, the apathy. I attributed everything to their grief for their mother, to adapting to the new routine with Deborah." "Don't blame yourself," Louisa consoled gently. "Deborah is manipulative and convincing. She took advantage of your vulnerability, your grief. Mrs. Zelda tried to warn me," he continued bitterly, "and I dismissed her, believing Deborah's lies about her being confused and outdated. Zelda is a wise woman," Julian commented. "She was the first to suspect and sought me out, and then she instructed Louisa to continue investigating. Without them, who knows how long this would have continued." Roderick looked at Louisa with gratitude. "Why did you risk so much for my daughters? Deborah could have done something to you." "Because it was the right thing to do," she replied simply. "Those girls were suffering and no one else seemed to notice or care enough to act." At that moment, the doctor in charge of the care, Dr. Paul, coincidentally Julian's nephew, approached with a grave expression. "Mr. Ashworth, I'm Dr. Paul Peterson, the pediatrician responsible for your daughter's case." Roderick jumped to his feet. "How are they, doctor?" "Stable for now," the doctor replied, "but the tests confirmed alarming levels of benzodiazepines in both their blood. Especially concerning is Melinda's case, who seems to have received larger or more frequent doses." "She was always the more rebellious one," Louisa murmured, understanding Deborah's perverse logic. "What's the treatment?" Roderick asked anxiously. "We are administering fluids to accelerate the elimination of the substance," Dr. Paul explained, "and carefully monitoring their respiratory and cardiac functions. High doses of benzodiazepines can cause respiratory depression, especially in small children." "Will they be okay?" Roderick's voice failed on the last part of the question. The doctor hesitated, choosing his words carefully. Physically, I believe they will recover without permanent sequelae, provided the use is stopped immediately. But psychologically, he paused. Mr. Ashworth, your daughters were subjected to a regimen of systematic sedation for an extended period. This can impact their neurological and emotional development. We will need to do rigorous follow-up in the coming months. Roderick nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility fall on his shoulders. I will do whatever is necessary, Doctor. There's one more thing, the doctor continued with a serious expression. As a doctor, I am legally obligated to notify the authorities about cases of potential child abuse. The unprescribed use of controlled substances in children falls into that category. I understand, Roderick replied, resigned. And I completely agree. The person responsible must answer for their actions. I can provide a detailed account of what happened. I can provide that, Louisa offered. I witnessed much of the abuse in recent weeks. And I have the results of the analyses of the vial's contents, Julian added, as well as records of previous interactions with Mrs. Zelda. The doctor nodded. Excellent. The more information we have, the better for the case. As Louisa and Julian accompanied Dr. Paul to provide their statements, Roderick remained in the waiting room, immersed in dark thoughts. How would he rebuild his daughters' lives after this trauma? How could they trust an adult again, when they had been betrayed so cruelly by someone who was supposed to protect them? Outside, the storm began to subside, as if nature had exhausted its fury. But within Roderick's heart, a different storm was just beginning. A turbulent mix of guilt, regret, and a fierce determination to never again allow his daughters to suffer under his care. Somewhere in the city, as the rain diminished, Deborah watched the hospital lights in the distance, an inscrutable look on her face. The battle was lost, but in her disturbed mind, the war was not yet over. The fate of the twins, Roderick, and everyone involved in that dark plot was yet to be decided in the crucial hours that would follow. The morning arrived in Asheville with a different luminosity, as if the previous night's storm had washed not only the city, but also the souls of everyone involved in that dramatic story. At St. Vincent's Hospital, Roderick had spent the entire night in the uncomfortable armchair between his daughters' beds, observing every movement, every breath of the little ones. Louisa silently entered the room, bringing coffee and some cheese buns she had bought at the bakery near the hospital. "How are they?" she asked in a low voice, placing the coffee on the small table beside him. Roderick accepted the cup with gratitude. He seemed to have aged 10 years overnight, with deep dark circles under his eyes and unshaven. Melinda woke up a few times during the night. She's still confused, but the doctors say it's normal during the detoxification process. Marianne slept more peacefully. Louisa approached Melinda's bed, checking the IV drip and monitors. Her nurse's eyes caught details that might escape others. "Saturation has improved," she observed, "and her heart rate is more stable." "Thank God," Roderick murmured. Then, looking up at Louisa, "And Deborah, any news?" Louisa hesitated, but decided the truth was better at that moment. "The police went to the mansion last night after we left. She wasn't there anymore. She took some personal belongings and disappeared." Roderick nodded, showing no surprise. "She was always clever. She knew she would face serious charges." "The police will find her," Louisa assured him. "They've already issued an alert. She won't get far." "I'm not worried about her now," Roderick replied, turning his gaze back to his daughters. "My only concern is that they recover completely." As if she had heard her father's voice, Marianne slowly opened her eyes. For a moment she seemed disoriented, but then, upon seeing Roderick, a small smile lit up her little face. "Daddy," she called, in a weak voice. Roderick immediately stood up, leaning over the bed. "I'm here, Princess." "Daddy's here." The girl looked around, observing the tubes and monitors, then Louisa, and finally the hospital room. "Where are we?" "In the hospital, dear. You and your sister got a little sick, but you're already getting better." "Is Aunt Deborah coming?" the little one asked, with a shadow of fear in her eyes. Roderick and Louisa exchanged quick glances. "No, my love," her father replied firmly. "Aunt Deborah won't live with us anymore. Never." Again. A visible relief passed over the girl's face. "She was mean when you weren't looking, Daddy." Roderick felt his heart clench. "I know, Princess. And Daddy is very sorry he didn't realize it sooner. But now everything will be different, I promise." At that moment, Dr. Paul entered the room, accompanied by a middle-aged woman wearing a white lab coat. "Good morning," the doctor greeted. "I see our patient is already awake. How do you feel, Marianne?" "My head hurts," the girl replied, bringing her little hand to her forehead. "It's normal, dear. It will pass soon," the doctor reassured, examining her carefully. Then he turned to Roderick. "Vital signs are normalizing, and the latest tests show that the substance levels in their blood are decreasing. We are on the right track." "And what about sequelae?" Roderick asked, lowering his voice so the girls wouldn't hear. "It's still too early to tell," the doctor replied honestly. "Physically, I believe they will recover completely. But psychologically," he paused. "Mr. Ashworth, your daughters were subjected to a regime of psychological manipulation and chemical abuse. Even if they are too young to verbalize or fully comprehend what happened, the impact is there in their subconscious." "What can we do?" Louisa asked, who remained close to Melinda's bed. "Therapy, mainly. I will recommend regular sessions, initially 3 times a week. And a lot of love, patience, and consistency at home," explained Dr. Renee Chambers. "These girls need to rediscover security, trust in the adults around them." "I will do anything to help them," Roderick assured, determined. "Anything? I know you will," the psychologist smiled. "And I see you already have an important ally." She looked at Louisa, who kept a protective hand on Melinda's shoulder. "Continuity and stability will be fundamental in this recovery process." 3 days later, the twins were discharged from the hospital. They were still quieter than normal for children their age, but little by little, signs of their natural vivacity began to reappear, especially when Louisa was around, telling stories or simply talking to them. The return to the mansion was a moment of apprehension for everyone. Roderick feared that the house would bring negative memories for the girls. Therefore, he had made some significant changes during their absence. "I transformed the old guest bedroom into a new room for them," he explained to Louisa as they climbed the staircase. "I painted it sun yellow, bought new furniture, different toys. I want it to be a completely new space without any association with her." Louisa nodded, approving the initiative. That was a great idea. New beginnings deserve new spaces. Upon entering the mansion, they were greeted by a surprise. Mrs. Zelda was waiting in the hall, with tears in her eyes and a warm smile. "My girls," the housekeeper exclaimed, opening her arms. The twins, who until then seemed apprehensive, lit up at the sight of the familiar figure. "Grandma Zelda," they cried in unison, running into the elderly woman's open arms. Roderick looked at Louisa, surprised and moved. "You brought her back." "I thought it would be important for the girls to have someone they know and trust," Louisa explained. "Besides, Mrs. Zelda deserves to be here. She was the first to notice what was happening and to try to protect them." "Thank you," Roderick murmured, lightly touching Louisa's arm. "For everything." The following weeks were filled with adjustments and adaptations. Roderick completely reorganized his work routine, delegating more responsibilities and working predominantly from home. Mornings were dedicated exclusively to his daughters, breakfast together, playing in the garden, reading stories. Only later, when they were in therapy sessions with Dr. Renee or at their part-time preschool, did he dedicate himself to company matters. Louisa, initially hired as a temporary caregiver, had become a constant and indispensable presence in the twins' lives and, gradually also in Roderick's, her nursing background, combined with a natural kindness and a fierce determination to protect the little ones, made her not only an excellent caregiver, but a valuable ally in the recovery process. On a particularly sunny afternoon, almost 2 months after the incident, Roderick watched from the porch as his daughters played in the garden. They were filling water balloons and laughing loudly each time one burst, soaking their clothes. Louisa actively participated, her simple dress already completely drenched, without it seeming to bother her in the slightest. "Daddy, come play too," Melinda called, now more talkative and outgoing than ever. "Yeah, Daddy. Aunt Louisa is already all wet," Marianne added with a clear laugh. Roderick didn't need another invitation. He ran down the stairs and joined the game, feeling lighter-hearted than he had in a long time. Later, after the girls had gone to sleep, a process that became calmer and more natural each day, without the need for any substance to induce sleep, Roderick and Louisa sat on the veranda, contemplating Asheville's starry sky. "Did you see Dr. Renee's report today?" Louisa asked, breaking the comfortable silence. I did, Roderick replied with a smile. She said their progress is remarkable and inspiring, that they are resilient children. They are, Louisa agreed, but they also have an incredible father who made radical changes in his life for them. Roderick looked at her with gratitude in his eyes. I couldn't have done it without you, Louisa. Your courage in confronting Deborah, in risking yourself to protect 2 children you barely knew, I can never thank you enough. Louisa looked away, suddenly shy. Anyone would do the same. No, they wouldn't, Roderick gently refuted. Most people would be afraid to get involved, to lose their job, to confront someone like Deborah. You are special, Louisa, extraordinary. A silence charged with meaning hung between them. From afar came the gentle sound of the stream that cut through the property, mixed with crickets and the occasional hoot of an owl. Speaking of Deborah, Louisa began, hesitantly. The police found her in Miami, Roderick completed. She was trying to board a flight to Mexico. The detective called me this morning. How do you feel about that? Roderick reflected for a moment. Relieved, mainly. Relieved to know she can no longer harm the girls. As for the rest, I don't feel anger, nor a desire for revenge. I just want to move forward, rebuild our life. You already have, Louisa smiled. And you're doing an amazing job. We have, Roderick corrected gently. You are part of this reconstruction, Louisa. An essential part. Her eyes sparkled in the starlight. I'm happy to help. It's more than help, he continued, gathering courage. You brought light back into this house. To the girls, to me. The look they exchanged at that moment said more than words. It was a beginning, timid and hesitant, but real. The first step of a long journey they would take together. The next morning, Roderick woke to the sound of laughter coming from the garden. Looking out the window, he saw a scene that warmed his heart. Louisa and Mrs. Zelda had filled the antique copper bathtub, the very one that had been an instrument of cruelty in Deborah's hands, with warm water and colorful foam. The twins jumped inside it, splashing foam everywhere, laughing non-stop. The bathtub, once associated with painful memories, had been resignified as an object of joy and fun. It was a perfect metaphor for what was happening in that house, in that family, transforming pain into healing, fear into hope, shadows into light. Roderick quickly ran down the stairs and joined the play in the garden. Feeling the sun on his face and hearing his daughter's laughter, he knew for sure the storm had definitely passed, giving way to a new dawn full of possibilities. As he watched Louisa help the girls make foam beards on each other, he felt a wave of gratitude and something more, something he hadn't felt since he lost Cecilia. It wasn't the same love. It was different, born of extraordinary circumstances forged in adversity, but no less true for it. Perhaps, Roderick thought, destiny had its own mysterious ways. Sometimes we need to walk through the deepest darkness to find the brightest light, and sometimes that light comes in the form of a brave young nurse who risks everything to protect 2 children she barely knows. In the future, when the twins were adults, they would tell of the valiant woman who entered their lives and saved them, not just from physical danger, but also gave them back the chance for a normal childhood, full of laughter, play, and genuine love. And so, under the blue sky of Asheville, a new family was born, not of blood or official papers, but of something much more powerful: the courage to protect, the determination to heal, and the infinite capacity of the human heart to start anew, even after the most devastating storms.